viewers, welcome to another exciting episode of Wired Women, and my guest today is Ruth. Ruth, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for having me. So my name is Ruth Dhliwayo. I am a self-confessed OCD, borderline, if anything. But I am the founder of an organization called Root to Be, which aims to widen access to employment for underrepresented communities and underrepresented groups. So that's really me and what I do.
Thank you for that. Before we go into what you do, delve deeper into that, can you tell our viewers who is Ruth as a person, as a human being? I always tell my guests that people want to know who you are first. So a little bit about you.
No, absolutely. So about me, I am a daughter, I am a sister and a friend. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. I was born there, and I grew up there for about 10 years before moving to the UK. So I'm a first generation migrant from, first generation. Having come here, I went into the education system, did my GCSEs, A-levels, uni, kind of follow the traditional route. To then, and then I have been working in the railway industry ever since, kind of stepping into the corporate world. I love watching movies, action movies, particularly Marvel movies. Anything that's action, you will find me there. I'm all over it. Anytime a movie comes out in the cinema, I'm like, I'm obsessed. So that's really sort of like my something that people don't know about me. But other than that, I really enjoy spending time with my family, traveling a lot. I really like exploring different cuisines and different cultures, seeing how people interact. It just kind of, I think, opens up something new that you never really knew you had. So, for example, visiting the Nordic countries, those people like to live life, and just the quality of work-life balance is incredible. And I see that and I'm like, oh, we don't do this in the UK, kind of like they meet up at work for lunch to have food, like proper food, not just sandwiches. It's like an insult when you suggest to have a sandwich with them. So just seeing things like that just helps me as well as a person. Just if I can pick up things that help me and improve who I am, then yeah, I'm all over that. So yeah, that's me.
So Ruth, you're such an enterprising young lady. I know we've been talking behind the scenes about how you came about Root to Be, but do you mind sharing with our viewers what Root to Be in essence, its brand soul essence is, and what it's all about? And I know in the introduction you mentioned a little bit tidbits about it, but can you tell us the story behind that?
In my life, I live by the principle of be what you can't see. The gist of it really is, growing up, or even not just growing up, but in life, you will be faced with a lot of situations and a lot of opportunities where you see that there's a lack of something. And if you ever see that there's a need for something, or there's something that's lacking here, it's not about waiting for someone else to come and fill that gap. You have to do it, because no one else is going to do it unless you do it. And this then just ties into the foundation and sort of like how do I put it? What drives me is being able to make an impact in people's lives. Mm-hmm. That's what I want for my legacy. My legacy is not about what jobs or what careers I did, but how many people I was able to impact while I'm on this earth. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the story for Root to Be starts off a couple of years back. I guess, why I started it was exactly that. I wanted to be what I couldn't see for someone. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that there was a need for it right up until the point that I entered the corporate world. Mm-hmm. I feel like, when you're young, you're growing up, you're taught about equality, you're taught about everybody's different in schools. And, you kind of grow up being mixed with different people from different backgrounds, right? From school, from university, and so forth. But I felt like the education system doesn't prepare you for the realities of life after you finish your education. When you step into the world, and it's almost like you're seeing it for the first time, truly, right? So for me, it was my first day my first day at work in the corporate world was when I realized that something needs to change. I had finished my master's. I'd got an opportunity, a lucky opportunity in the transport industry. Now, transport is a very male-dominated industry, right? It's no secret, that's a fact. I was fresh out of university, so I was like 22, 23. I was very young. And then on top of that, I was a Black woman. So I stepped into the office, an office full of 60 people, there was about 5 women, right? So I was already a minority because I was a woman stepping into a man's world. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, everybody was like 40 and above, or that's what it seemed like, right? Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to say is that they had experience, they had years, and they had been working in the industry for a very long time. So then I had like the age factor. And then on top of that, I was the only person that looked the way that I did. I was Black. And all those, like, that was like a triple whammy of like boundaries and barriers that I had to face. Mm-hmm. And so I just wondered, like, for me, I felt so out of place. I felt like, okay, yes, of course I know I'm great at doing this, right? But it kind of diminishes your like self-confidence, because it's like, you know, I wasn't used to being the only person that looked the way that I did, to put it that way. Because at university, you kind of get into your silos and you know people from like, you know, from African descent, from Caribbeans and so forth. And so I was always surrounded by people that were like, you know, from different cultures, but I was never alone. Yeah. Up until I got into the corporate world. And for me, that was hard. That was really challenging, because even up to now, the sad reality is that I'm still the only Black person in a lot of rooms that I enter. Mm-hmm. And of course, you kind of, you know, you get over those barriers eventually. But then I wondered how many other people out there kind of feel alone and don't have someone to kind of talk to or lean to and ask how to progress and so forth. And so that's when really it started. And I just wanted to be that for someone else. So it really started with sharing my career path with other people. I felt growing up, my career path was only as wide as the people that I was surrounded by. And I mentioned, as a first generation immigrant, everybody came into the UK and they were all in the healthcare sector. So really my strive to want to reach further than healthcare was like abundant. It was not there at all. So I felt like, you know, a lot of young kids really don't fulfill their potential because they don't know anybody that looks like that. They don't have anybody to inspire them and to enable them. So partly that, and my experience of entering the corporate world, was really the reason for starting Root to Be, was to be an organization that helps people from underrepresented communities, people that look like me, to enter the corporate world and to be able to succeed and promote their success based on other people's experiences, because they can share that. But not only that, it was to highlight other young people that are doing exceptionally well, that are breaking barriers, to inspire and enable the younger generation, to let them know that anything is possible. It does not matter about your color, about your background. If you work hard, you can accomplish X, Y, Z. And these are the people that we want. Like, you know, these are the young people that are doing great. Just so then it provides, you know, like it provides almost like a file of people that one can look to if they're unsure about their career path. And yeah, I suppose all those elements just fit in. That's how it started. I was on Snapchat one day. I was working abroad and I decided to do a day in the life of Ruth. And then my friend popped up to me and said, "This is a great idea. Like, let's start something out of that." And that's really how it was born.
So talking about, you've already probably unpacked most of the other questions that I would have asked you, because in that, your answer, I've seen what your attributes are. I've already seen what sort of mindset you have as a trailblaze, fearless female entrepreneur. So you've already unpacked that. So I'm not going to repeat any of those questions. But then again, I guess going forward, moving on from that, what would you say was is the main driving factor about you sustaining this business? What have been the challenges so far since? Sorry about that. The driving factor you've already mentioned in your previous response, but what have been your challenges that you faced so far? Have you had any pushbacks?
Yeah, I think much like any enterprise, it's never a straightforward road. There's always bumps in the road. And I think for us, one of the challenges we've faced was the reach. How do we reach this audience that we want to help? And how do we make sure that they are engaged in what we have to say? Because ultimately it is going to help them. And within that reach, sort of like arena, as I mentioned, it started on Snapchat. Because we thought, what is the best way of getting to the audience? They're so social media driven. So we need to use social media platforms in order to, give them this information. And then from that, engagement was like, it started off high, went low, and then we changed our strategy and we went on Instagram. And so it's been an evolving process of how do we make sure that we keep our audiences engaged. This generation is one of those generations where it's really difficult to keep sustained, and the attention span is really low. So that has been a challenge. But now, it started off as 2 people. We've now built a team, and everybody that is in that team has lived experiences. And so therefore, we're able to bounce off ideas and be a bit more innovative about how we reach the different audiences. And then actually, we're moving into a stage now where we're partnering up with universities because perhaps the social media element isn't working. So we need to do face-to-face. So we're trying out a lot of different strategies. But I think that for me, I would say was the toughest thing was making sure that the information that we want to portray gets to the right people and in the right format.
Amazing. Well, that's why you're on Wired Women. That's one of the reasons why you should be on Wired Women, because obviously our endeavor is to help and increase the visibility of people that are doing amazing things such as you are doing. And that's why it's such a privilege to have invited you on, and hopefully we can help you to have that credible voice and that visibility that you so much seek as an entrepreneur. So moving forward, what would you say in the life of Ruth to be Ruth? What does that day look like in starting from the time you get up in the morning if you're doing your work? And of course, I'm aware that you've got a full-time job that you're still working in. But what would that day look like if you were to have a full day working in your business?
Yeah, so I do have days where I do. I obviously work full-time on Route to be with my annual leaves and so forth. That day would start off with me waking up at 5 or 6 a.m. usually. I do my meditation in bed. I read the news, I pray, and then I get my day started. I try and exercise in the morning, but that's always kind of hit and miss. But I try and put a 20-minute run in there during my day. And my day would start off with me speaking to Taddy, my co-founder, and Chris, who is our operating officer. Speaking with them, just checking. It's usually at the start of the week. So what do we need to do this week? What are our key priorities? What's in the pipeline? Is there anything that we didn't do last week that needs our attention now? Do we have the right resources to make sure that we're able to implement whatever we need to this week? So it's almost like a look ahead. What do we need to do this week? And then we assign different actions to different people. So it may be that we need to increase our university partnerships. We need to increase our corporate sponsors and our partners. We're also working on another project for some sort of like a ranking project of different inclusive organizations. So that would be another project, is getting an update on that and what are the barriers that are hindering progress to that. And then once we get that picture and we know exactly what we have to do, we start working. So I am I like to think I'm very organized. So I always have a to-do list. It's not my life is not complete if there's no to-do list. I like to tick things off, because for some reason it makes me feel like I'm actually doing something, those little successes that you do, and, just to reward myself really. And so then we would start working on that. We have regular updates via WhatsApp. We have a lot of video conferences, actually. I think I probably see them more than I see anyone. So we do that, and then sort of have a sort of like a progress update at the end. So either like midweek or towards the end of the week. We have a weekly meeting every Wednesday, just to catch up on progress. It's so important for us as well to make sure that everyone is, their mental state is really good, because obviously, as you mentioned, we work at the full-time job. So we don't want people to have a lot to do and then that hinders like or affects their mental health. That's really important to us. And above all of that, above us working, we like to have fun. So we keep ourselves going, sending each other jokes, sending each other memes, because I think it's important just to have fun. I think it just really drives and makes people want to work more. So that would be me. I think I gave you a weak view because a day might
fine. I mean, that's in your power toolbox. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that and would benefit from hearing that list of how you go about your day. Obviously, checking those boxes is extremely important. I really agree with you on that, because otherwise you feel like you're just climbing a mountain, which doesn't feel like you're getting to the top. But I think as you go along ticking those boxes, it makes you see the progress that you're making. So it's a really, very good tool to have. And thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
So moving along as well, maybe to look in the past, maybe from your past coming from Zimbabwe, like you said, and I know that you're a first generation immigrant coming here, but I would like to ask you, how does it feel like? I know that you've got other disparities that you've had, or barriers, so to speak, that you've had to come across. However, there's another one that probably we need to mention here, which is being an African in the diaspora working in the Western world. How would you say that has worked out for you, if at all, or how have you said that has been a challenge for you, being a non-native or non-first generation immigrant living in the United Kingdom?
Yeah. It brings its own challenges. I think the good thing about the Southern African countries is the fact that English was a first language, particularly in Zimbabwe anyways. So I've always grown up knowing how to speak English. So in terms of the language barrier, I thought it wasn't as bad. Of course, when you're multilingual, sometimes it takes a while for your brain to kind of process certain information. So that was like one little thing, but I've been working towards it. I think the hard part about, being a diaspora working here is that sometimes it's difficult to engage in conversations. I feel like, my counterparts at work have grown up in a certain way, and they have watched these TV shows and they have attended these theaters and they have done all these things that I feel they can relate to, and I can't, because that's not how I was brought up. As sad as it sounds, I'd never known that we can go to a theater or, do anything like that, or so read plays and like all these books, right, and stuff like that. So sometimes I feel that I can't participate in some of the conversations because I just don't know, and that's not how I grew up. So sometimes, and I mentioned that because I'm quite young as well, and I work with a lot of people that are older than me. They always talk about, oh, there was this TV show back in the 90s or something, and I'm just there smiling like, oh, okay. I can't even engage in that because that's not what I grew up watching. So that's always like a little bit difficult. But I think the hard bit, and I'm only speaking from my experience, and I don't know if other people have felt that, is growing up, I felt like, my parents, and rightly so, had always been vocal about the fact that I was always going to have to work twice as hard because of the color of my skin. So that has always been ingrained in my head, that I always feel that I have to work twice as hard as my counterparts, just so then they can notice me. And so then they can see my hard work. And for the first, for the first couple of years in my professional life, I felt like I went above and beyond when I didn't need to, because I just felt like, how am I going to work this twice as hard? How are they going to see that I'm working twice as hard? Which meant, staying a little bit longer, saying yes when I didn't need to say yes, and just taking on more than I needed to. And that was like really difficult to overcome. But I got a mentor. I shared my concerns, or not concerns, but I just shared like how I have been approaching life at work. And they were really good in guiding me and like making me realize that I'm there because of how good I am at my job, and not because of, you know, the color of my skin or anything like that. So that was just like a barrier that a lot of people, I think, have faced, especially people that I have spoken to, that they just feel that they should take on more because, you know, they have to work twice as hard, or they're not going to get promoted, and stuff like that. So I think that experience and having a mentor helped me in terms of my career progression, because I was able to kind of be vocal about what I wanted, about me, and making sure that I was heard. I wasn't so much a subservient anymore. I was quite assertive and like, you know, this is it, this is what needs to be done. And, you know, I think it just got to a point whereby I didn't let the color of my skin deter me from being vocal and being demanding just as much as my counterparts. So I think it was more like a confidence thing.
Yeah.
That I think people
at the end of the day, I think the line is so blurred. And I think that sometimes we put that barrier ourselves. It doesn't even really exist. And because it's inherently in our heads, and like I said earlier on, because we are on default, and we tend to gravitate towards things that we're comfortable of, or things that we've been raised knowing or hearing about. And we think that represents who we are, when in actual fact, it's just a construction that we've constructed in our own minds. And if we overcome that, then we're able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, as it were, but also to realize that that line was just so blurry and it didn't even exist to begin with. So thank you so much for sharing that. So the other side of the coin of being in the diaspora, I guess for me, what I would ask is that, how do you relate with people back home in Zimbabwe? How does that work out for you? Because in my experience, I've realized that I like to your point where, you know, you feel left out when you're having conversations about your childhood stories. And then when you go home, you feel like you've missed out a huge gap of your life and you can't relate to them culturally because there's certain things that are missing. And maybe you've become perhaps westernized, too westernized, because you've been living in the South, global South. And then when you go back home and it's like you're an outsider and they're looking at you, you've got this accent and you've got all these little nuances, little habits that are so westernized, and they look at you, they don't even recognize you. So how do you balance and relate your native self and Ruth in the diaspora?
Yeah, I think that's always the challenge, isn't it? You kind of almost feel displaced because here there's challenges you have to face, and back home there's still challenges you have to face. It's almost a question of you start to ask, like, who are you? And you almost have to cultivate your own identity, taking, like, you know, your heritage and your culture and now where you're living. And I think a lot of people do that. I feel like I've suddenly had to almost get to know who I am, because I didn't fit in both. I didn't fit in like the two boxes that should define me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I think luckily for me, my grandparents have always come this side, you know, they come for like 6 months. So in terms of my relationship with my family, most of them are here. So I think that helps. They understand how things happen. But I think for my cousins that are back home, I mean, I don't know about you, but they all think that money grows on trees around here.
Like that one. We need to talk about that one later on. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, exactly. They don't understand that it's equally just as hard. Of course, not in the same conditions as them. But constant communication with them, just catching up, seeing, you know, what they think, how they're going. I think that just kind of helps in terms of increasing your knowledge of what's going on. So when you do go there, you're not just kind of going in dark, but you know what's been going on. And I think I've just been fortunate enough that with my family, they understand because they're all here, besides, of course, my grandparents. But I haven't really had much challenge there.
Yeah, you're lucky on that. When there is a comedian back in Zambia who has actually made it their business to imitate people, native Africans that live in the diaspora, and how we carry ourselves when we go home.
I don't know what's his name.
That's so funny. It goes things like this. Oh, are we having breakfast? You're having bread for tea? And you know, And oh, what time are we? Like things like that. Like we do certain things that unconsciously, unbeknown to us, are just so alien. And when he actually puts it in a comedy form and you look at him, you will burst out laughing because you will recognize yourself in that. But at the same time, you'll cringe because you'll be like, oh my gosh, is that how I come across?
I'm gonna have to get his name so I can match him.
I wish I could find his name and his contact. I think my sister might have that information.
Oh, yeah.
It's really amazing to watch that and see what we look like in their eyes. But then at the same time, on the flip side of that coin, I guess it will be quite interesting to hear a comedian here in the Western world to see and reflect to us what we look like as aliens in their country. So whether we are always saying back home this, back home that, in my country that, I guess that's also another
thing. I know my parents say that a lot.
Yeah.
Justify everything.
Yeah, because they'll be like, but this is your home now. Why do you keep on referring to back home? I'm like, oh, sorry, my native country or my country of origin. They're like, yeah, but you actually have been here longer than you've been in your native country. So
yeah.
Why don't you call this home? So it's really, really, to your point, we're really displaced. And I wish that there was a sort of a title that we can put to people like you and I that are actually in between two countries. We belong in two countries. For some of us, it's probably even three countries, because prior to the UK, I lived in the US. So I wish I could find a term that would actually describe my transatlanticness. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So to wind this up, to wrap this up, if there was something that you would give advice to our viewers, especially the people that you are trying to reach, and if you were to help them to resonate with what you are doing, because I did hear you say at the beginning that the biggest challenge has been the reach, but I think in my thinking, it would be also resonance, like for them to actually understand in maybe a pitch, an elevator pitch, what would you say to them to understand what it is that you do with Root to Be?
Yeah, okay. So at Root to Be, we are dedicated to widening access to employment for underrepresented communities. And in order for us to widen that access, first of all, young people need to be inspired to reach those places that are probably maybe imaginable or they think is hard to reach. And in order for them to do that, they need to have role models. It's very important for generations, young, old, any generation, to have role models, just so then they can aspire to be, their best version of themselves. And part of that as well is our enablement piece. We want to enable the underrepresented communities to occupy these spaces in various industries, in employment. And in order for us to do that, it starts with helping you with your CV. How do you portray yourself, helping you with your personal brand so you can clearly articulate who you are to potential employers. And then we have our empowerment piece in that just cultivates a lot of networking with other professionals and other young people, creating a platform where we can share knowledge based on our lived experiences, and that is actually applicable, that when you do enter this, when you have got access to that employment, that you're able to use all that knowledge and all that information to promote your own success, because you know how to get to the top, because you've got all this great knowledge that you've learned from meeting and mingling with different people. So our 3 pillars of success, are enable, inspire, and empower.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Ruth. And how would our viewers get hold of you if they're way to find you? Could you share your contact information, please?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Ruth Dhliwayo, and I'm sure Jennifer will tag all the links. And if you have Instagram, you can also contact me on Instagram on Ruth Kudzai. I do have a website as well, where I write a blog and I share my experiences to, empower the working women. and that's ruthkudzai.co.uk. So you can reach me on any of those platforms, and I'll be happy to catch up.
Amazing. Well, Ruth, it's been such a joy having you on the show today, and I hope that we can have another conversation in future to delve deeper into what you do at Root to Be, because it sounds so interesting and there's quite a lot to unpack from that. But for now, this has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today on Widening.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You have a great day now. Bye.
Sorry.
And you have a great day now.
Bye, you too. Thank you. Bye.
No worries. Bye.